Good afternoon, everyone, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Taipei. And I'm a leading physician in Taipei Veterans General Hospital. I'm Li Guoliu. And today my topic is Asian consensus for sarcopenia diagnosis. And I'm really have this thank the Huanca have this give me this opportunity to share with you the latest progress in sarcopenia diagnosis and can share with you our recent study results. So I think everyone here knows quite well that muscle mass declines with age, and somebody said that the structure and function decline in muscle mass and lean body mass may be the most dramatically change in all the organ systems while we are aging, and not only muscle mass but also muscle strength declines with age as well. And long time that it has been a debate that in all the changes, the most important is muscle mass or the function. It's always been a debate. And you can see that the total percent of loss in lean body mass have several different and quite varied complications. It varied from the minor immunity changes or the risk of infection increases to the risk of death increase. And along all the process, you can see that the daily living has been limited while our lean body mass decreases, and the elderly population have been affected a lot because their quality of life decreases, maybe because of the pain or limited ability to walk or to climb a stair or even to rising from a chair. So this has been noticed and have been done a lot of researches to prove or to investigate how can we do about our muscle mass and function decline with age. And you can see that from this electronic microscopic pictures that in the left hand it's a young adult CT scan cut of thigh. So you can see that his subcutaneous fat tissue is quite thin and his muscle mass is quite dense and large. So you can imagine that he was a very healthy and powerful man at the age of 28. And while we see that the picture, we took the picture to the 78-year-old man, you can see that the subcutaneous fat tissue had become very thicker, and the muscle mass become very smaller and very irregular surface. And not only because of these changes, also you can see that the fat infiltrates into the muscle bundles. So it made white lines between all the muscle fibers. So this, in fact, affects the muscle function more than the muscle mass change. So our hypothesis, or the experts' hypothesis nowadays, say that the strength loss not always parallel loss in mass. Someone doesn't have quite significant muscle mass decrease, but his muscle power may decrease more than we expected. And below that is the modern sarcopenia definition. I think everyone knows that because later we will introduce a little bit about the EWGSOP's consensus about sarcopenia. You can see that the modern definition is nowadays means the low muscle mass. But not only low muscle mass, you have to plus a low muscle strength decrease or a low physician performance. So you have to have the morphological change plus a functionally change to make the sarcopenia definition. And as I said before, that European Working Group on Sarcopenia in Older People, EWGSOP, and published their consensus in 2010. They make several definition about they make several consensus about definition that we mentioned just in the last slide, and they make a screening algorithm suggestion or the recommendation to the community dwelling older people. They say that people older than 65 years old should be screening for sarcopenia, and they make several priorities about the screening process. They make the gait speed and hand grip strength prior than the muscle mass examination. I think if you have done or have read several papers about this field, you will know that muscle mass measurement is a little bit more difficult than the functional measurements. Because in the functional measurement, you can only measure the gait speed or the hand grip strength. Is more easier to measure in the clinical setting. And you can see that International Working Group on Sarcopenia, IWGS, also makes several recommendations about who should be screening, about the target group, to see that who should be screening for the sarcopenia. Not only the sick people older than 65 years old, they also suggest some maybe frail or weaker older people to receive this kind of sarcopenic screening test in clinical settings. So nowadays you can see that the progress of sarcopenia and the clinical outcome and the risk factors, this kind of table or this kind of cycles, pictures that have been more and more clear nowadays. People now knows what is sarcopenia and what will become in the future if we don't do anything and let people become frail, weaker and weaker. Now we have to look back into Asian population. EWGSOP had made a consensus initially in 2010, but we have to think about that. Do Asian people really similar or united or the same with the Caucasian population? So we can see that this is the population in Asia. We know that nowadays and even in the future, Asia will be the most populated continent in the world, and even more and more. And while with this rapid aging process, you can see that this will become a problem in Asia mainly. So after 2010, our group has taken several steps and literature reviews to see during that period, during those years, what has been done or what has been investigated in Asian countries. So you can see that the papers are really limited, were really limited. This was one from Japan's population, and they done sarcopenia diagnosis simply by muscle mass measurements without modern definition about physical performance or muscle strength. You can see that this is from Korean and also muscle mass measurements in 2013. And sorry. And in Taiwan, published in 2013 that we use EWGSOP and IWGS criteria for sarcopenia definition. Sorry. Okay, this is Hong Kong, and the yellow duck is very famous. And also muscle mass measurements. And if you really take notes on this, you can see that all the cutoffs are, most of them were using the lower 2 standard deviation below the mean of younger people or younger references. And this was one from China. Also, they use muscle mass measurements without physical performance. And this was from Thailand. And they use SMI and this. So during those several years, those were only papers that we could find in Asian countries, using the Asian population base to see that the sarcopenia condition in Asian countries. So what was happening in Asia study was that, you can see the first is the prevalence of sarcopenia ranged from 77.8% to 35.3% between Asian countries. And the prevalence was lower than Western countries. So the sarcopenia condition may be different. Our body figure or our age-related change trajectory may be a little bit different from our Caucasian colleagues. So if we took EWGSOP's cutoffs and all those markers from European countries, just put them into the Asian country or Asian population, maybe they will be a little bit not so proper. And from all those studies, you can see that only one study used the model approach from sarcopenia, and the remaining and the others used only muscle mass measurements. And the cutoffs, we have to say that we didn't have really conquered or number or the value of the cutoffs. So each population will use their own cutoffs to define their prevalence or the high-risk group or even the sarcopenia group. So this was our main considerations. And what happened was that we tried to gather experts from Asian countries. So we gathered all that we can catch and can be contacted. And those experts were doing their research field focused on the sarcopenic or the geriatrics field. So we get experts from Japan, Korea, China, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Thailand, Malaysia. And the other countries, some of them were not so aged. So some of them didn't even have geriatricians. So it had been a very big issue even till nowadays. We gathered those experts in 2013. And this was the first AWGS meeting in Taipei. And we tried to obtain certain consensus about the screening process, about the outcome indicators, even about the cutoff values of each measurement if we could. And this was the second Asian Working Group for Sarcopenia meeting in 2013, in June in Korea. This was the second. And the third was in the same year in November in Kyoto. So all the experts try to polish these ideas and try to gather all the available research results from all the Asian countries, even though some of them were not even published yet. We try to gather all of our data to get our consensus paper. And it was done in 2014. You can see that all these experts were from all the Asian countries that we can get, and from every working group or research group during when they were doing the research about sarcopenia and the related field. So we tried to make several consensus. First was the strategy of sarcopenia screening and assessment for older people. You can see that the older people definition was not quite the same with the EWGSOP consensus, because in Asia, several countries made their definition about elderly population to the 60 years old, like in China. If people older than 60 years old, they say it's elderly people. So we made those strategies. First, in community settings, you can see that in the community, older people aged 60 or 65 years old should be screening for sarcopenia. And if in any specific clinical condition in all healthcare settings, such as recent functional decline or weight loss for over 5% in a month, or depressive mood, or repeated falls, malnutrition, or some specific chronic conditions, those specific conditions should be screening for sarcopenia. Those were not just consider their age. This was our first consensus. And the second consensus was the outcome indicators. Because every paper that we mentioned before, doing the research about frailty or sarcopenia, use their own clinical outcome indicators. And we tried to put some consensus here, put some like this one. The first was a static approach and the dynamic approach. We tried to put this to make people doing research on the same goal using the same outcome indicators. So those papers will be more easily to be compared in the future, to comparing which kind of screening or which kind of investigation will, or the intervention will make better outcomes. So you can see that static, the activity of daily living change, quality of life, biomarkers of sarcopenia, and several things. So you can see that in the table, and the dynamic approach. And we also try to simplify the EWGSOP's screening algorithm. It was not quite different from the EWGSOP, but we just put the functional together hand grip strength and gait speed strength. If both of them are normal, then this person will have no sarcopenia. If either of them or both of them are abnormal, then muscle mass measurement should be done. Should be measured to see if any muscle mass change, and then these people will be diagnosed as sarcopenia. So the idea is not different from individual SOP, just to put the table more easily to be recognized. And we also put several cutoff suggestions of the muscle mass index and the hand grip strength in the consensus paper. In the future, you can see that we try to make a global consensus because, of course, the population is different. Everyone may have their different cutoffs and may have their different, maybe in the future, interventions, or the mechanism of sarcopenia may be different from different population and different countries. But we try to gather the experts' opinion from whole world, hoping to get a global consensus in the future that all the physicians in the world can get a more easier way in the clinical setting to screen, to diagnose, even to treat this kind of patients or this kind of elderly population, and to help them to get better life and better activity in their late lives. So those are my presentations. Thank you a lot.